we're live for our conversations about integrity, and I am talking today to Peter Powell. And I love the description that you sent me about who you are, and I'm going to read it.
Thank you.
Peter Powell is a musician by training and an entrepreneur by accident. He has worked as an entrepreneur running his own marketing and event production agency, lectured in universities, and facilitated workshops and design days on creativity, entrepreneurship, and marketing. He is passionate about learning and determined to convince anyone who will listen that everyone is creative and, given half a chance, has something valuable to contribute to the world. His latest project is launching Team Academy Maastricht, a university for entrepreneurs in which students learn to do business by traveling around the world as they launch their own business and earn a bachelor's in business administration. And I will add the link to this in the description of this podcast.
Awesome.
I met Peter online, actually, for the first time.
Not like that, not the way you guys are thinking.
Much. At the Alt MBA, for Seth Godin's Alt MBA in 2016 in autumn. And we've had some very nice conversations then, and we've met since in person, both in Copenhagen, Berlin, and Amsterdam already, which is quite amazing, I find. And here we are again online in a conversation, and I invited you because I was curious what you would say about integrity.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm curious too. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to say about integrity.
Yeah, good. What else? I know that you are living in the Netherlands, but are, yeah, I always forget, Canadian English,
Australian.
Yeah. I hit it. I did not expect
you
that.
got it. It's the Commonwealth. I am the Commonwealth.
Okay. Wonderful. I feel very honored to be talking to the Commonwealth, especially these days. It's quite an interesting.
Don't. No. We're not talking about
yes. Anything that you would like to add to your introduction before we start with the subject, or?
No, I think that just about covers it. Yeah,
Right.
I think that's everything.
Wonderful. So my first question for you is whether you have a concept of integrity, and if so, why, or what is the value of it for you? What does it mean for you?
I do have a concept of integrity. For me, integrity is sort of consistency regardless of the situation. So to put it in Disney terms, being true to yourself. And a really good example of this, which kind of brought the concept home to me, is a friend of mine who worked as a communications advisor to the governor of the province that we're in. And I got the chance to be at an event that he was in charge of, that he was hosting, where you had sort of top politicians from the Netherlands, governors from all the provinces, really absolute top level people. And this friend of mine was exactly the same amongst that group of people as he was when he was at home with his kids. Same way of behaving, same way of treating people, same way of talking. And that to me is the definition of integrity.
And I wonder if you have a physical sensation that you connect to integrity, or also that you connect to a lack of integrity, or like when you notice something is missing for you. How?
I think it's balance versus imbalance. So a sense of groundedness versus a sense of sort of being off balance.
Like actually feeling like you lose balance.
Yeah, well, I think so. So for me, this discussion of integrity is often about behavior. So certain people behave in a way that lacks integrity. Politics being a fantastic example. And then you can, of course, look at sort of facial features when someone's lying and all that. But I know for myself, when I'm maybe behaving in a way that isn't actually consistent with what I believe, you have this feeling of insecurity and this feeling of like, you know, I don't know, almost like you're sort of standing on one leg and trying to keep your balance on one leg. Because the thing is, you are doing things because you think somebody else wants you to be a certain way, rather than doing things because of that being who you are, which means that you never actually know what you're supposed to be doing or how you're supposed to be behaving. So you are constantly kind of trying to find your way around, which gives you this feeling of imbalance.
So there's also a sense of like sensing outwards, like to get the confirmation of whether or not you're doing the right thing. Yeah. And something that I've been curious about, and what kind of started these interviews or these conversations with people, is actually to look at how does this concept of integrity play out in everyday life. So not necessarily only in like the big, big life decisions, or on like looking at politicians, for example, which are in a way in the spotlight, but to look at, okay, how do I behave when I'm in the supermarket, or how do I interact with people that I know, and looking at my question is, if there are places, ever so small moments in your everyday life where you notice that it's challenging, and if you're willing to share examples.
Oh, great. Well, just as you were talking, I was thinking maybe sort of there are multiple ways this integrity thing plays out in real life. And one of the things that struck me is that there's integrity in the sense of you have a certain character, a set of character traits that you just have automatically, and you might adapt those, or myself, I might adapt those because I'm with somebody else, I'm around somebody else, and I want them to like me. But also there's this thing of like, I have certain choices that I've made. For instance, hey, it's New Year's, a perfect example. I've made a New Year's resolution to do something. Like last year, my New Year's resolution was I wanted to work out 5 days a week. And then you, for whatever reason, don't stick to that. So there's integrity sort of in the sense of being around other people, but also integrity in the sense of this is something I've decided to do, I'm going to do it. And for me, those play out in a couple of ways. I think when it comes to like integrity with the second way, though, I've made a decision, am I going to stick to it? Like sugar is definitely, like, I love sugar. Basically, give me chocolate, anything like that. I think that's a challenge. The way I handle that is like, one of the things I realized recently is dieting is not about making healthy eating choices. It's about making healthy shopping choices. And so choosing not to buy, crappy food is kind of the way that plays out. I think the second one is more, or the first one is more complicated. The one about when I'm around people, certain people, do I behave in certain ways? And this was something that it was a big struggle for me when I was younger, especially. I mean, everybody has this issue of insecurity when they're a teenager. For me, it was maybe a little bit like extreme because I was homeschooled when I was a teenager. More my parents' choice than mine. Not that it was all bad, but so I was homeschooled. I was foreign, so I was living in Holland from 6 to 12, and then living in Canada from 12 onwards. So I was always the foreign kid, and I always felt like I didn't really fit in. And so for quite a while, and of course it still shows up every now and then, I will try to adapt to other people's behavior and try to like meet their expectations, or what I perceive their expectations to be. And then now I'm just rambling a whole bunch. I realized a really good example of this. A couple years back, I had a sort of massive life realization, one of those like depressing moments when life hits you in the face, and that so many of my decisions were still based on what I thought, in fact, my parents expected of me. And I had this moment of like, holy crap, I'm living this life that I've built for someone else, not for myself. So many of these decisions are based on sort of the set of values that my parents have, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing, because your sense of values and morality often comes from your parents. But if you don't own it and make it your own, then you end up having this feeling that I had of like, crap, this isn't my life that I'm living. I'm living somebody else's life, and I want out. I want it to stop. I want to start building my life. So I had this massive life crisis, and I was very fortunate to have some super good friends around me, and my wife, and a whole lot of other people who kind of guided me through it. But I had to go through this process of deciding, how do I build my life and make choices that are sort of consistent with what I think and what I believe, not this performance mentality of this is what other people expect, and I have to sort of fit in with that.
You're bringing up a very interesting point, I find, and that is owning the values that you live. Because this is like one of the questions that I've had. What is it actually that makes integrity, like what makes an experience of integrity? If we say, okay, it's being true to yourself, or some people also now in these conversations have said it's about being whole. And even when you're living, for example, because you feel like something is expected of you from other parents, there's an aspect of you that needs their approval for some reason to survive. So as a whole, actually, this is also part of you, yeah? Even though but at the same time, it feels like it's external, their values, not my values.
Well, I disagree slightly. So I agree with like 99% of that, but this thing of that, the point that you brought up of parents being, that being part of who you are, the question is, why are you behaving like that? And are you behaving like that because it's part of who you are and that's how you were raised? Or are you behaving like that because you want to have some kind of external reward? So for me, it was this thing that I kind of, the way I'd been raised, which was kind of conditioned to have this performance mentality of, when you behave the way you're supposed to behave, then you get appreciation and then you get affirmation. When you don't, then you get punished, and you don't get that affirmation, that appreciation. And it was maybe somewhat extreme. So my motivation wasn't doing it because it was who I am and the way I was raised. My motivation was this subconscious drive to have to perform, otherwise I didn't get any kind of sense of personal validation.
Yes, but needing a personal sense of validation in some way, even like at that moment, was something that you needed. And it might be that in the moment that you become aware of it and realize, maybe I can get validation from a different place, or I don't need it in this way. I don't want to need it in this way, and I need to find a way to change it. Until that moment, it's still in a way it's also a part of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe not a comfortable one, or one that you appreciate, or, but that's the funny, weird thing with integrity also, that there's like parts of us or our experience that we might not like or want, but if you're honest, maybe they're still part of who we are, or at least were at some point.
Yeah, I think kind of this is like a massive, complicated rabbit hole we could dive down. So stop me if it gets too much. But so what you're referring to is this thing of like, when I have an experience, am I the experience? To what degree do I integrate that experience or that thought or whatever into my sense of who I am? And when you're talking about this, what strikes me is there's a difference between acknowledging something and accepting something.
Yes.
So I have this experience of I need validation from this external source. Now, you have to acknowledge it because it's part of your experience of life, and that's the wholeness you're describing to some degree, where you're saying, hey, there's this crappy experience that's going on, and you can't pretend it's not happening because that's just plain unhealthy and things are going to explode.
Yeah.
So you have to acknowledge it. But then once you've acknowledged it and you've looked at it, do you have to accept it? Do you say, I'm going to continue to allow this to have part of
no, of course,
place in my life? Or do you say, you know what, I don't want this to have any place in my life anymore, and then you sort of eject it from your person?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of what you're referring to.
Yes, exactly. That's what I meant. Like the way of like becoming aware and then making it, choosing, do you make it your own, or do you actually reject it and say, look, no, I know I've lived like this, but actually to really feel my sense of integrity, I want to not do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And that touches on a really interesting point about integrity, which is that in a way you can't live with integrity if you don't have the ability to be kind of fully honest with yourself about these things that are going on. Some of these things you might not want to admit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for that you need really good friends.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of cases. So you can look in the mirror all you want, and you can write in your journal all you want, but there's always going to be things that you might not see for yourself. So when you have really good friends who you trust and who you're allowed to kind of speak into your life, they can bring that up and be like, yo, there's this thing that you said you thought was important that you're not doing. What's up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like, and very important, this aspect that they are people that you trust and whose comments you allow to reach you in a way, right? So that,
yeah, which is another really good kind of sidetrack there, which is on the one hand, you could have people who don't allow anyone to speak into their life, which is a problem. On the other hand, you could have people who allow literally everyone to speak into their life. So whenever somebody says something, they take it to heart and take it personally, and that's also not healthy, and in a way lacking integrity. There's something I'm spitballing here, but there's something to do with integrity and the people you choose to surround yourself with. Sort of picking people who share the same values as you, who don't have to agree with you, but who share the same values, or kind of who you respect, and allowing those people to speak into your life rather than just literally everyone.
you think they have to have the same value, like all the same values?
No, but I think that especially very core values to who you are is important. So to kind of, you choose values hopefully based on what you think is good and right, and kind of how you think the world should run. And that doesn't mean those can't change, and it doesn't mean that you're right. But it does mean that you hold them quite close to you, and they are very much connected to your sense of who you are. Now, if you go to someone who has the complete opposing view, you can have a conversation with them and you can learn from them and maybe grow. But if you have someone like that and they speak into your life, it's just like, I don't see how that could work. I think you would be so, your sense of identity and values and purpose would be so shattered by what they say that I don't think it would be healthy. To make it really extreme, if you have somebody who let's say doesn't believe in, let's say, for instance, for me, relationships are really important. Friendships are really important. Friendships is something you should respect and honor, and loyalty is super important in a friendship for me. If I then have a friendship with somebody for who loyalty does not matter, that is not going to work. I am going to be frustrated and annoyed and angry and hurt. So I have to be careful about who I choose to be friends with.
Yeah.
So I can still have some degree of a relationship.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go to them and say, hey, I've got this tough choice I have to make with my life. What do you think I should do?
Yes.
Because it's just not, we're not going to see eye to eye.
Yeah. 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 And I think this is important, like having this ability to communicate on eye level, or on like respecting each other in a certain subject, so that the criticism, for example, also doesn't come belittling or in any other way patronizing, but actually be like, hey, I know you're amazing in all other ways, but look, this thing you're doing right there, not cool, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you what you're touching on is like, on the one hand, the way someone gives criticism is important, but on the other hand, the relationship has to kind of be at a certain level where you just have that mutual trust where you can allow somebody to address issues that make you feel uncomfortable and make you maybe not look so good and all that stuff.
Yeah. Do you have a kind of practice or anything that you use for yourself when you feel like you are in a situation where you're not sure whether to do this or that, or whether there's like different motivations? Or because integrity often, I find, gets questions either when we're in a new space, like in a new area where we have never interacted before, or if there are maybe paradox like poles, like either people that we want to please or we want to be in contact with, but for some reason there's something that is in a conflict, or subjects like, do I spend my time on this or on that, and like navigating this space with integrity.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, the first one you addressed, which is like a new space, like being in a new place or around new people. There's sort of, there's how I think I should act and how I usually act, which is I can be very sociable and communicative and all that, but I hate meeting new people. I'm really bad at it. And I can force myself to do it, but so usually if I'm in a new space and I don't have some kind of external motivation, I just become antisocial and either talk to the people that I know, or you know, if this is like a pet, oh my gosh, like if I'm at a party and somebody has a pet, I'll go hang out with the pet.
But this doesn't have to mean that you do it without integrity. It can be a choice where you're like, okay, I'll go talk to the pet.
Yeah, well, so yeah, of course. But I think in that situation, sort of, that's quite a selfish way to behave in a way. So how I am trying to act more and where I'm trying to move towards is just going and talking to people and pushing myself a bit out of my comfort zone. Of course, if I've had a long day and I'm feeling lazy, then I won't bother. But trying to make it about other people rather than myself is maybe a good way of handling that. The other things you touched on there are more complicated, which is like when you find yourself in the middle of a debate, or when you're trying to make a decision, sort of like we were talking before we started the recording about what do you want to do with something in your life. So that what we're talking about before the recording, for everybody who's listened, is I made this decision to get started with Team Academy recently, and I had the choice to stop the previous work that I was doing, which, you know, is a pretty steady income. It's something I've built up over the last couple of years, and then start with Team Academy, which was totally new. It's a risk, and it's costing a bunch of my savings, and maybe it doesn't work out. So that was kind of the core decision that I was trying to make last summer. And around the time I was trying to make this decision, I was in Berlin with Aninia, and I had another good friend of ours, Steven. And so that what I did then, which is ask you guys what you guys thought, is actually a kind of a go-to mechanism for me when I'm trying to make tough decisions. So first ask Michelle, my wife, and then second ask people around me who I trust, and also who I see the results of the choices they've made in their life, and I think, okay, this is good. This is something that I would like to see in my life. So yeah, going to people that I trust is a mechanism that I use for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And also just thinking, like taking time to process and write stuff down, and like meditate through these ideas or these conflicts. Yeah.
I like that. It's yeah, asking people for, like, in a way you're referring back to using friends as a mirror, or for your like personal behavior, but also using other people's perspectives as inspiration to make choices.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be even friends per se. I think it can be just like this thing of anyone who you see the results of their choices and you think this is something that I would like to see in my life, you can go and ask them for advice. And that doesn't mean you need to take their advice, but you can ask for it. And I think my general approach with a lot of things is get a lot of different bits of information and then look, okay, what do I have? How do I value everything? And based on that, how do I make this decision? I think that's a really good way of kind of making choices in general.
Do you use any kind of, I don't know why this came into my mind now, but do you use any kind of visual aids for yourself? Like when you collect these choices, the way that you gestured, I think made me, and also knowing that you do facilitate creativity workshops, I was wondering if you have some trick up your sleeve.
Like well, so I facilitate creativity workshops, and the thing about me is that, so I like to paint and draw and all that, but I'm very, like all the visuals go in my head very easily, so I can visualize things really easily. So mostly the visual stuff is just happening in my brain. I have a really easy time coming up with an image of sort of the choices that I have to make and all the consequent results of those choices, and then that image just stays and I can bring it up whenever I want. But I probably should do like mind mapping or something. I'll often write it down. That helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But nothing crazy creative.
Mm.
Sorry to disappoint.
I find like it's pretty amazing to think that you would have an image that you then kind of pull back up in the front of your mind. Pretty cool.
It comes from music, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So for everyone listening, I am trained as a classical guitarist. I have a bachelor's and a master's in classical guitar performance, and I had a career performing and playing in competitions and doing the whole music thing. And when you're playing in competitions, especially, the issue is always, or for me, was always memorization. So you've got like an hour's worth of really complex classical music that you're going to jam into your brain, and then like kind of every note you miss is like a minus point in the competition. So you want to like hit all the notes and not just play the right note, but play them in the way that you want it to. So the volume and the rhythm and everything is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
All the expression is in there. And so the trick with memorizing that complex stuff is basically to put it in your brain in as many places as possible. So the simplest form of memory, which is what most people call muscle memory with music, is tactile memory. So it's memory that's triggered by a feeling. So you've played it so many times that when you touch the strings, you just know, okay, this is what's supposed to come out. Problem with tactile memory is it's not super reliable. So you could also do auditory memory, and auditory memory is just listening to the song over and over again. You can do like, like you can analyze the piece of music harmonically and memorize the harmony. And then for me, what was always easiest was visual. So I would just visualize myself sitting and playing the piece of music, and just like I do maybe 5 or 6 hours of practice on my instrument, and then like 2 hours of mental practice.
Mm-hmm.
I just play through my whole program in my head, and whenever I was like traveling, I'd play through my program in my head. And so I think that ability to visualize something is where that what you're referring to comes from.
Yeah.
So for all of you who want to be super nerdy and try this at home, you can learn it. Just practice.
Yes, so isn't that a nice recommendation at the end? Practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, when you're trying to make a difficult decision and you talk to all these people and make this image of the different things in your head, is there any of these auditorial, like hearing like their voices or their the physical sensations that you had while you were speaking with them, with different people, or like
what is like, I think what is physical is just as cheesy as it sounds, I'm learning more and more to go on gut instinct. So the decision-making thing is an interesting one to chat about in and of itself, just because I'm kind of having this debate with myself after going through this process of deciding to go for Team Academy. One of the kind of final stones was chatting with another friend of mine, and what he said is, Peter, you already know, which is like super like Zen, whatever. But he said, you already know the choice that you should make, or that you want to make, the one that you really hope for, but a bunch of things that you think, you know, like you should be responsible, or you should pick the safe route or whatever, those things are stopping you. So just go for the thing that you know you want to make, like the decision you know you want to make within yourself. So trust your gut instinct. So if you're talking about sensation, I think getting kind of a feel for like, oh, this is right, this feels right, is definitely a physical sensation, and it's definitely something in your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that point that I just made kind of negates my whole thing about having a process for decision making. So maybe like this is
maybe
having an adult thing, right? Where it's like you make decisions with the help of people, and then the more you get through life, the more you realize how you can make decisions sort of just on, like, you get to know that gut feeling better and better as you travel through life.
Yeah, and it might be that it's not just, I would say it's not disconnected from your thinking either. Like, I mean, it's informed probably by different things, some of them that we can't track with our thoughts because it's too subtle or too mystical. But some of them, sure, also from information or facts that we did at some point here in a conversation, or a thought that we picked up there.
Yeah, what kind of muddies the water a little bit, right, is that I was recently listening to I think it was Freakonomics, some podcaster, and they were talking about, I think it was a podcast about quitting, and basically, like, when you have a situation where you genuinely don't know what you should do, the best choice always is just making a choice. So a lot of people think that they should wait around until something kind of like shows up and that lights the way and tells them what path to choose. But in general, it's always better to make a choice sooner rather than later. So that kind of muddies the whole issue of like, should you have a process or not? Because making a decision better is always sooner is always better. But anyway, this is a sidetrack. This isn't about integrity anymore. About making decisions. Sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you can still talk about making decisions and wanting to keep your integrity in it. And then the next question is like, okay, but sometimes maybe it's making a quick decision, and then afterwards you notice, okay, no, this really feels wrong. I need to change this decision, or whatever effects it had. And
then you're dealing with the sunk cost thing, right?
Yes.
Which is this thing of like, I've made this decision. I've already invested all this time going in this direction. Should I change my mind now?
Exactly.
And then just recognizing that, like, the time that you've put into it should actually have zero bearing on your decision.
Yeah. My final question is always whether you have a kind of tool or resource or process.
Well, wait, it's over already? This was so fast. I didn't even ask you any questions.
You can ask me questions if you want. We can postpone this question.
Okay, what's the physical sensation for you?
For me, it sounds really weird.
Hey, it's your podcast. You can say what you want.
Yeah. For me, the physical sensation of integrity is very like if you think of apple juice, there you can have this clear apple juice, and you can have this kind of murky apple juice. So sometimes when I used to go into the sea in the winter, and the sensation in my body, in the blood, feels like the blood turns from murky to clear. And this for me is the same sensation with integrity. It's like the blood and everything inside is kind of like clear. There's nothing that's in the way. And it's, in a way, everything feels connected and very undramatic. And a very clear sensation of the bones, or like the physical, like the structure being just there without having to do anything.
This is bringing up like, I have a note on my computer filled with all the like random ideas for blog posts that I want to write at some point in the future, all of which need to like get written. And oh yeah, so I wrote this note. This is at the very bottom. This is from when I first started this note, and it says, "Pure pain is cathartic. Tainted pain breaks you." And so this thing of like going into the ocean, and like that, the cold does not feel good, but it feels good.
Yeah.
Right? It's this like pure cold, and it's extremely painful, but because there's this like sense of purity to it that you're describing.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it painful. I would say it's cold, basically. But I didn't go into the water when it was painful.